Good evening, everybody. This is Brian DiSabatino, and happy New Year, and welcome to 2021. It's been a long time since we've seen you, and as of now, there are already about 130 people that have logged in. So this is a very exciting night for us. We haven't seen you in a while, and as you can imagine, since the last time we touched base, a lot has changed. We were extraordinarily excited to begin the dialogue tonight because a lot has changed for the good. There are a lot of the good things happening at the Grand, and 2021 is going to be a very good year for all of us. But out of respect for your time, I'm going to stop about there and turn the floor over to my good friend and the executive director of the Grand Opera House, Mark. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Brian, and welcome to all of you. Can't really see you in this virtual environment, but it's great to know that you are out there. As Brian said, we wanted to start off the new year with a lot of the news that we have from the Grand, and there is quite a lot of it. Thank you all for registering to take part in this conversation. And it actually is a conversation because we have organized our agenda around the questions that you provided when you registered. And they really fall in 5 basic categories of information that you would like to know. And we're happy to be able to provide the answers for all of those this evening as we progress. And we will be very mindful of your time, even though there's a lot to cover. We don't want to keep you here all evening, although we could. But let's just get started right away. What are we doing? How are we doing right now? And the answer is a lot better than we were 10 months ago when this pandemic started. You will recall that in March of 2020, on the governor's notice and on very short period of time, with a play on our Playhouse stage called The Play That Goes Wrong, we had to close all of our venues, cancel all of our performances. We all thought it was going to be a shorter period of time than it turned out being, and as you all know, we're not through it yet. But the board had a great deal of confidence in the importance of the mission of the Grand and a commitment to maintain our service to the community. And so we reached into our endowments, we applied for every grant and piece of government support that we could get to keep the program going and to keep serving the community of Wilmington and Delaware as we have done for nearly 150 years. That did come at some pain because after we ran out of government support money back in August, we had to lay off 60% of our staff. But even after that, we continued to maintain some level of programming for the community, even though our indoor venues were all closed. What did we do? We did concerts by car, drive-in concerts at Frawley Stadium, 4 of them that we presented over the summer. We did drive-in movies at Bellevue State Park. We continued our Summer in the Parks program with live concerts in neighborhood parks around the city of Wilmington. And then in December, we launched our first ever holiday light show, Winter in Wilmington. All of those were designed to maintain a presence for the Grand in the community and to remind people in a time when we couldn't be together that the arts are still important. We also maintained our community engagement programs, most visibly with our Stages of Discovery program, our school matinees, where since we couldn't bring people here, we couldn't bring kids in buses by the thousands to the Grand. Our community engagement department worked together to provide online content, not live, but online content to now we've served more than 80 classrooms with multiple hundreds of students who've been able to continue to have arts experiences virtually through this pandemic. So all of those are great examples of how the Grand has continued to serve the community through this crisis. And it has been a difficult time, but one that we've tried to interject art in. And then I think our culminating experience, which we just concluded at the beginning of this month, was 6 weekends of our holiday light show. We brought more than 30,000 people from the 4-state area together to see our light show at the riverfront. We combining it with our grand gala, which we couldn't do live, but we did with a live stream concert and with a special evening at the light show. We were able to net $175,000 in income that will go right to the bottom line of the Grand as we struggle to find a way to get back on our feet and reopen later this year. So we're very pleased at what we've been able to do, that we've been able to maintain a presence in your lives and in the lives of many of our fellow Wilmington residents through this. But as we look forward, we're continuing to have a need. And I think Brian wants to say something here. Sorry, got ahead of you, Brian.
Go right ahead. I'll go right ahead.
Well, in addition to the support that we got from the light show, we've gotten support from a lot of sources. Our sponsors, many of them who traditionally sponsor the Grand Gala, rolled their support over to not just the gala, but the light show. So we were able to do this relatively risk-free for our organization with the support of all of these great sponsors. And we got an incredible amount of support from all levels of government. The city co-sponsored our light show and helped with some of our Summer in the Parks programs. The county gave us a special innovation grant that will allow us to upgrade our technology to have less contact and to provide services, including live stream concerts that we're going to talk about later. And the state passed along some of the CARES support from the federal government. In fact, $500,000 of support, so that we are able at this point now to be much more optimistic about the future.
That's great, Mark. I love the technology, because as I was talking, the mute was appropriately on. So I wanted to jump in, if I could, to talk about the light show for a second. You know, people have asked me, you know, what it's like to be chairman of the Grand Opera House during a pandemic. And I've got to tell you, this is an odd answer. There's no place I'd rather be. I have to tell you, having had a front row seat to see how the community has responded to the Grand, but more importantly, to see how the staff, the show corps, the board, the trustees, and scores of volunteers have responded, has just been, it's been something to admire. While the Grand has sat in a very precarious situation, the staff came up with an idea in the fall, and in just 7 short weeks, they were able to conceive of, have approved, and create an execution of a light show that entertained this community at a time when it needed it most. They didn't sit idly by trying to let somebody save the Grand. The staff of the Grand and the show corps stepped forward to do something unthinkable. They raised, as Mark said, $175,000. That gives us more runway to when, and we're going to talk about it later, we can open. We were able to put over 10,000 cars through. But what was really striking, and I hope never, ever, ever in the history of this organization gets missed, is in the midst of all of that malaise, on cold nights, on raining nights, in the middle of a pandemic, this staff rose to the occasion and donated probably the equivalent of about $35,000 worth of their time, about 2,500 hours. You know, those folks with the flags and the lights and the radios and stringing lights and taking tickets and helping people, they did that time for free. So not only did they figure out a way to give us extra time to make it to the other side of this pandemic, they turned around and they lit up this community, literally and figuratively, at a time when it's needed the most. I tip my hat to the staff and the show corps of the Grand Opera House. And by the way, in the midst of all of that group were some folks that unfortunately got laid off, and they still came back to support this effort. I tip my hat, because you folks have gotten us to a place we'd never be. So I thank you for that. So thanks, Mark. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And I'm glad you mentioned the show court too, because even though we're not able to do performances indoors, the show corps has throughout this, through our concerts by car, our drive-in concerts, and the light show, continued to support the Grand and our efforts. And it's truly humbling to have this kind of dedication on behalf of our volunteers, ushers, and show corps. It's been really great. And just as we were closing the light show in the first weekend of January, we got some incredibly good news that hasn't come to fruition yet, but is on the cusp, and we're very, very excited about. In the federal COVID relief bill that was passed at the very beginning of January was a program called Save Our Stages. And what Save Our Stages will do is provide $15 billion of support for the live entertainment industry. That's for-profit and nonprofit, but $15 billion. And we don't know how much of that is coming to the Grand, but we expect it to be substantial. And from everything we've read and the research that's been provided so far, we do qualify for that support and hope to know in the first quarter of 2021 exactly how much of that we'll get. And that will make all the difference, both in attaining our fundraising goals to reopen, but also just as important is the recognition in the midst of this pandemic, with so many troubles in so many parts of the economy, a recognition on the behalf of the federal government that the entertainment industry is a vital part of our economy. We know that here locally. We know that the entertainment sector contributes $150 million to the Delaware economy and supports 4,000 full-time equivalent jobs. And we know that the Grand's portion of that is more than $10 million a year that we contribute to the city of Wilmington and nearby. So we've believed that for a long time, and I know a lot of you believe that, but to get that kind of affirmation from the federal government has been truly remarkable. On to our next question, which is one that we got from many of you joining us tonight. When can we reopen? And more importantly, when can we reopen safely? The pandemic has been a shifting target, as we all know, and there's still much that needs to be known. And the watchwords right now are optimism and flexibility. We hope to be able to do indoor performances by the fall of this year. And that includes both Broadway and our music and variety series. But we have decided that in coming back, there are so many challenges that we face and that our patrons face that we need to be cautious in this. And so it's our intention to come back gradually with a lighter, modified schedule as we rebuild audience and establish trust in our safety protocols. It's also a factor for us as an organization that presents touring artists, that artists have to be comfortable touring as well for them to be able to play here in Wilmington. And so we are going to do this carefully and flexibly. We're looking for indoor performances in the fall, but in the meantime, there are a lot of things that we have planned that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes. We are putting safety protocols in place so that when we reopen, there will be a lot of reassurance for our patrons. We're going to require that people wear masks, and we will enforce social distancing. We do regular cleaning. And with some of the funds that we've acquired from the federal, state, and county government, we've acquired disinfectant foggers. We've upgraded our air exchange rates in our HVAC system, and we've also purchased new ticketing technology to reduce contact. And that includes printed home and tickets that will be scanned here instead of hard tickets that are carried and torn at the door. So we're very excited when we get back to live performances that we're going to be able to do it in a more technologically sophisticated way. So what are we going to be doing in the meantime? And that question I'm asking our programming staff, our managing director of programming, Steve Bailey, and our associate director of programming, Matthew Hubner, to answer that question for you. Steve and Maddie?
Great, thanks. like Brian says, and like Mark has said, I mean, I'm looking at this participant list. It's 148 people, and it's rather difficult, but I scanned through really quickly, and it dawned on me that I've seen some of you people consistently for over 20 years. This has been hard, I have to admit. When we first went down, we thought we would be open in just a few weeks, few months maybe. Started rescheduling shows, and when it looked like the pandemic was going to drag on longer and it was in fact going to get worse, our conversations with agents turned from talking about artists because artists weren't touring to what was going to be the reemergence strategy. And I think for us, sitting on our hands for 7 or 8 months has been tough, but now it's opening up again. And like Mark says, we kind of look at the fall as a time when we'll be able to open the doors back up with the safety measures based on the restrictions that will still be there, and start to do programming that you'll recognize, that you'll be attracted to, and hopefully that you'll feel safe enough to come to. As soon as the weather gets warm, true to our nature, we're looking at a lot of different possibilities for going back outside. Matthew's been leading the charge on that, and I'll have him talk in a minute and give you the details on what you might expect in that regard. But I think, like everybody here, like Brian, like Mark, like all the participants, I think there's a hopeful tone that we're gonna get this thing open. We're gonna look like we used to look, and we're gonna ease back into it in a way that is observant of the virus, what's left of the virus. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all again on a regular basis come fall. And with that, I'll let Matthew skim down through a list of, and bear in mind that some of these things, like many things that we work on, will materialize. Some of it will turn to dust. I mean, I often joke with Matthew, so you realize that, 80% of what we work on seems to just vanish in thin air, but we still manage to get enough programming to excite the community and support the institution. So with that, I'll let Matt run down through.
Before you turn it over to Matt, Matthew, can you just talk a little briefly about what you're learning from your colleagues in the industry about artists' desire to get back on tour and even willingness to tour outdoors in the spring and summer?
Is that addressed to me, Mark?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Right around August, when it became obvious that we were going to go into the fall and the holiday season with artists still not touring, it really got gruesome. I mean, just consider the fact that these artists were no longer making any money. And as most of you know, there's no money in records anymore. There's no money in all of the avenues that they used to use. They go out on the road, they sell tickets, they sell merchandise, and that's how they support themselves and their family. But yet it was silent still. It remained silent because there was nothing to talk about. And I think for Matthew and I, the break, the welcome break came probably 6 or 7 weeks ago as we began to talk to agents about the plans for artists and what they're going to do in 2021. Now understand, everybody's been off. So the glut, which translates into the possible choices in programming, might be something unlike we've ever seen, very unnatural to say the least. And as the idea of going to a stadium with 20,000 people or a larger theater with even 4,000 or 5,000 people doesn't quite take hold as quickly as 800, 1,000, 1,200 does, we may well see some artists that are way, way over our head playing our stage. I mean, look, I'm all in favor of throwing these exciting tidbits out there, whether they come true or not. That's kind of what we're seeing. We think that everybody's going to be touring, and the capacities are going to build. They're not going to just throw open the doors to Giant Stadium and say it's safe suddenly. I think that with the lessening restrictions, it'll be much more manageable in the smaller venues. And so artists may have little choice but to play venues they normally wouldn't because of money and because the fact that, if you're going to attract 10,000 people, it's kind of tough to play 1,200 seats. So that's something to look forward to. I think there'll be a glut. Hopefully we're open enough to take advantage of that glut.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump right in here. My name is Matthew Hubner. If, in case you don't know me, I certainly recognize a lot of your names. It's a pleasure to be here today and speaking on behalf of the Grand. And I just wanted to jump right in and give you all an idea for what me and Steve's day-to-day has been for the past several months since March, since we closed down, as well as give you an idea for what's on our horizons. So jumping right in and sticking with our theme of optimism and flexibility, this has been a very interesting time for the music industry as a whole. We've seen a lot of everyone in the industry, be it agents, promoters, or managers, everyone's in a situation where everything's kind of on a level playing field. No one can really get a show out and running right now just because of the situation of COVID and all the other circumstances that are enveloped in that. But thankfully, we've been having a wonderful staff and a wonderful community support of just getting all these shows that we can do out and into the face of our community, which has been absolutely great for the past 10 months. And we're starting to see, in terms of flexibility, we're starting to see a lot of these agents that are just able to make it work for the time being, simply because that we don't have any other choice but to work together. So in terms of optimism and flexibility, it's been a very interesting time for the industry, and it's been a pleasure to work in this type of scenario despite the crazy circumstances. So in terms of what we have planned for what's coming next and what we're doing in the meantime, as everyone prior to me has explained, we're aiming to do everything to open up come fall of 2021. That is our hope, that is our plan. And what a day-to-day for me and Steve has been for the past couple months is planning for that time period. We're sending out offers and sending out inquiries on so many different performers that we've presented in the past, as well as new shows that we haven't actually brought to the Grand as of yet. So that's been a fun but occasionally difficult task for us to do, which is planning our upcoming 21-22 season. But I've had the pleasure of sticking to other projects in the meantime. And some of those projects you have already been potentially witness to, which have been the Concerts by Cars, which have been the drive-in cinemas, as well as Summer in the Parks. What's great about these projects that I've had the pleasure of working with my team on is just all the community support, all the community collaboration that has come together. I had the pleasure of really trying to spearhead the Concerts by Cars to the best of my ability, and I had the opportunity to work with the city of Wilmington, with the police department in Wilmington, with Frawley Stadium, and we really got to enjoy working with some partners that we might not have otherwise worked with, and that really was a very nice sight to see all of our community supporters coming together, and also our patrons come together at a lot of these different events, such as the Concerts by Car or the drive-in movies. And it's been great to see what work we've been able to do out in the parks in our community as well. So I believe that we will be sticking to some of those projects come the next several months. It will allow us a very safe way of gathering to enjoy a spectacle of any sort. So you can expect to see that in the future. We're also looking into doing a different type of concert gathering, which a lot of you probably have seen, and those are walk-in concerts. There's a couple of different names for them. Some of them call it potted scenarios or socially distanced concerts. But as you can imagine, this has been very well sought after, simply because it can be limiting to be in your car and in so many different circumstances. You know, it's hard for a comedian to gauge their audience when their audience is honking horns at them instead of laughing at them during a punchline. So this will provide a very interesting scenario that might be very beneficial to everyone involved. So we can have the performers out on the stage being able to banter with their audience once again, whether they be a comedian or a singing artist. And another great thing is just not having to be, confined by your vehicle, and getting out to be in the fresh air and in a place where you can gather with other people like we have in the past, just in a different scenario that we haven't necessarily seen in Wilmington yet. One more scenario that we're looking into as well is live streaming concerts. This has become very popular over the course of the pandemic, both for techie people and just for the standard concert goer. I've spoken to very many concert goers in my network, and I know how hard it's been for them to, frankly, get their fix of going out and getting to enjoy music with their friends in a way that they just haven't been able to in the past. So we're looking forward to adding this scenario to our list of options for coming events. And we are excited to say that we're aiming mostly at local performers. We're hoping to bring more community members of our community together so we can do this. And then hopefully it can branch off into things like live streaming national shows or live streaming other rental events as well. So as you can imagine, I'm very excited about what's coming next for the Grand. I get the honor and the privilege to get to work with this team on making some of these dreams come true. And I'm very excited to get that done. And I'm very excited to have you all here along with me.
Thank you, Matthew. I just want to note with these live stream concerts that Matthew mentioned, that we're able to do that thanks to an innovation grant provided by Newcastle County, which has allowed us to acquire the equipment and then provide the training to our staff so that we can actually create these concerts. And keep an eye on your email because we're going to be announcing more about this in the coming weeks. And it's something that we're really excited about providing. So that gives you a sense of programming in the future and programming in the both in the long term and the near term. But the next question that we want to ponder tonight is, what can we look forward to? We can look forward to the theaters being open by the fall. We don't know when exactly. It will depend on the distribution of vaccines, but please know that we're doing everything we can to be open as soon as we think it is safe, both for our artists and for our patrons. But 2021 has a particular significance for the Grand Opera House. It is our 150th anniversary. The Grand opened on October 22nd, 1871. So this will be our 150th anniversary this fall. Brian's going to tease me for using this word, this SAT word, but it's our sesquicentennial. And we are planning a set of celebrations that we will do in the fall to recognize this landmark university, this landmark anniversary. It makes us the oldest performing arts institution in the state. And we want to celebrate this even though we're in a time of restriction. And so we will be announcing later this spring and in this summer how we will be celebrating our 150th anniversary. But we're not going to let this pass by without some celebration.
You know, Mark, I love and don't love the image that's up on the screen right now. I love it because it's our home. It's the Grand. I don't love it because it's empty, and it makes me sad. And I know we've got 160 participants on this call right now because everybody wants to get engaged and wants to imagine what the Grand will look like in the future. And we're also grateful that the callers, the participants today have given us a bright future. And I just want us for a second to fast forward to December. I can't say sesquicentennial, but I have until December to do that because I plan on dressing up in my white tuxedo, getting up on that stage and leading us all in the most rousing standing ovation to ourselves. I mean, imagine what we have been through in the last year, and we've got a lot of work yet ahead of us. But how cool is it going to be when we all gather at the Grand Gala next December, because we will? How cool will it be when we get to look around the room and say we are still standing, and we're still standing because of each other. And because of each other, not only 2021 was great, but 2022 will be great. And we can fill that hall again, and we can fill the restaurants again, and we can fill the babysitters' pockets again, and we can fill the streets with the joy of the performing arts like we never have before. Mark, I am so excited to hear what the staff has put on the table, and I'm really, really excited for that. I'll just say for now, 150th anniversary.
Works just fine, Brian. Thank you. And that really segues into the last question that we want to answer for the evening. And that's, what can you do to help? Many of you took your ticket purchases that you had made in the spring and applied them for credits. Please know that those credits are still good and will remain good until we're able to reopen. And if you are willing to convert those credits into a donation, we would be very happy to accept that donation as well. But at the very least, if you have a credit on file, just know that that credit's in place and you don't have anything to worry about. But in the meantime, we are looking for ways to raise more money to be able to reopen and really to get back to the full health we were in a year ago right now. January of 2020, the Grand was in perhaps the best shape it has been in the more than 14 years I've been with the Grand. And it was particularly tragic on top of all of the other losses that we experienced, that we lost that momentum. But we are determined to get it back, and we're doing that through what we call the RISE campaign. And to talk a little bit more about the RISE campaign is our Director of Development, Kate Baker Frawley. Kate? You're muted, Kate.
You would think after, 8, 9 months, I would learn how to do that. So thank you, Mark, and good evening, everyone. Most of you have heard about the RISE campaign, so this will just be a little recap for you. But as Mark mentioned, we have recently launched our new campaign to rise. So our curtains will rise again, and all those things that were said earlier about the Grand, everyone can come back. I can't wait to see Brian in his tux and to applaud everyone. So our RISE campaign has started the quiet phase. RISE stands for Rebuild, Invest, Strengthen, and Empower. And I won't read all that to everyone, but we've started the first phase, and I'm so happy to announce that we have already raised over $800,000. That is for the Grand, for those initiatives. And that has been done very quietly with some close friends and supporters of the Grand. Next, we will roll out our second and third phase, and this will all culminate with our anniversary, 150th anniversary next December. So if you have any questions about RISE, in the chat function of this, there'll be a link. You can just click on that, send me your email, and I will get in touch with you to provide any information that you might need. So thank you in advance for your support of the RISE campaign. Can't wait to celebrate with everyone.
Okay, thank you for that summary. I just want to note that that $800,000 that we have received so far has come from the board, trustees, ShoCore, and staff, as well as the support we got from the CARES Act from the federal government in the first round of support. It does not include any of the Save Our Stages money that will be released, we hope, in the first or second quarter of 2021. So that's going to move us even closer to that goal of getting reopened and back to the full strength that we had before the pandemic started. I have had several people ask the question, even on the chat tonight, as to what do we do if we fall short of our goal? Well, please know that the Grand will reopen. We haven't really closed because we've continued to provide programming throughout the pandemic. Our venues have been closed, but the Grand itself has remained open. But our venues will reopen, and the Grand will get back on its feet and available for the community. If we fall short of our goal, which we don't expect to do, we expect to be able to raise this money, then we will have to curtail some of the programs that we have been known for. And so it's really important for you, our most important stakeholders, to do what you can to make sure that we get back to that full strength so that we can offer the full range of programs that the Grand has always offered to the community. So that pretty much wraps up what we have to tell you tonight, other than to let you know to keep an eye on your email because there's news coming all the time. We will schedule another one of these chats later in the spring when we have more news specifically about programming that will be upcoming and what we hope to gain from the Save Our Stages program. I want to thank everybody who's participated tonight for your interest and your support. It is so vitally important for the staff and the volunteers to know that you are out there and that you care and that you want us to succeed. And I encourage all of you to consider what you can to support the RISE campaign so that we can rebuild, invest, strengthen, and empower the Grand for the next 150 years. Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. We're gonna wrap up here in just a second. I just wanted to take one more opportunity to say thank you to everybody. And Mark, I share your level of optimism that we're gonna get there. I share that optimism because just today, Kate was kind enough to drop off a stack of letters that were worth about $100,000 in gifts. Everything from $50 to $10,000 from individuals that have joined the RISE campaign. So I share your optimism. I also share your optimism because I've seen what's at the heart of this organization, 160 participants on a call tonight to see how we're doing, to see what the future looks like, to stay engaged. I've seen the staff jump up in the middle of the pandemic and put on that light show. And hopefully as our guests tonight have seen, Mark, your staff has been working in the trenches every day to make sure that the moment there is light at the end of the tunnel, we snap back into fighting form. And I'm so grateful to you, the staff and the show corps. And so what we ask of everybody is to stay engaged, stay in touch with us, pay attention to the information that we put out. Feel free to click that link that's in the chat room right now to request more information. We'd love to tell you more about the RISE campaign, to tell you how you could become involved. And we promise we will be back in front of you in short order with more and more updates. So happy 2021, and thank you all for being here tonight.
Brian, before we let everybody go, we got a great question that I think is important for everybody to keep in mind. When we talk about the Grand, we're talking about all three venues of the Grand. That's Copeland Hall in the Grand Opera House building, the Baby Grand in the Jocko building, and the Playhouse on Rodney Square in the former DuPont building. Those are all three venues. And so when we talk about the Grand, we're not talking about the building, we're talking about the whole program. So everything that we said tonight applies just as much to the Playhouse and the Baby Grand as it applies to Copeland Hall. So any of you who support any of those programs, you need to be confident that we have all of them in mind, and we're working on a plan to reopen all of them as soon as we possibly can.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And good night, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Be hopeful. Have a great year.